Hey there, nature enthusiasts! Today, we're going to embark on an epic journey into the frozen wilderness of the Arctic and get up close and personal with one of its most iconic inhabitants, the mighty polar bear. Buckle up, because we're diving deep into the fascinating world of these magnificent predators. Alright, before we jump into the nitty-gritty, let's set the scene. Picture this. A vast expanse of icy tundra stretching as far as the eye can see, with shimmering glaciers and frost-covered landscapes. This is the realm of the polar bear, a true symbol of the Arctic wilderness. Polar bears, scientifically known as Ursus maritimus, are the largest land carnivores on Earth, and they are uniquely adapted to thrive in one of the harshest environments on the planet. These apex predators are built for survival in extreme cold, with thick fur, a dense layer of fat for insulation, and specialized adaptations for hunting and navigating the icy terrain. Now, let's talk about where these incredible creatures call home. Polar bears are found throughout the Arctic region, including the Arctic Circle, Canada, Alaska, Greenland, Norway, and Russia. They are highly adapted to life on the sea ice, which serves as their hunting ground and primary habitat. During the winter months, polar bears venture out onto the frozen sea in search of seals, their main source of food. They rely on the sea ice to travel, hunt, and even breed, making them uniquely dependent on the Arctic's frozen landscapes. However, the ongoing threat of climate change and melting sea ice poses a significant challenge to polar bears, as their habitat continues to shrink and their access to food becomes more limited. It's a critical issue that conservationists and researchers are closely monitoring to ensure the survival of these magnificent animals. Alright, let's get into the nitty-gritty details of what makes polar bears so unique. First off, let's talk size. These guys are absolute giants, with adult males weighing in at around 400 to 720 kilograms and measuring up to 10 feet in length. That's like having a small car walking around on all fours. One of the most striking features of polar bears is their thick, white fur, which helps them blend into their snowy surroundings and provides insulation against the cold. But here's a fun fact. Their fur isn't actually white, it's translucent, and it appears white because it reflects light. Now, let's talk about those paws. Polar bears have huge, powerful paws that measure up to 12 inches in diameter. These paws act like snowshoes, distributing their weight evenly and preventing them from sinking into the snow and ice. Plus, those sharp claws come in handy for gripping onto slippery surfaces and catching prey. And let's not forget about their iconic black noses. Contrary to popular belief, polar bear noses aren't black to absorb heat. They're actually black to help them retain heat by absorbing sunlight. Alright, let's talk about what's on the menu for these Arctic predators. Polar bears are opportunistic feeders, but their primary food source is seals, particularly ringed and bearded seals. They use their keen sense of smell to detect seal-breathing holes in the ice, and they'll patiently wait for hours near these openings, ready to ambush their unsuspecting prey. When it's time to strike, polar bears use a combination of stealth, patience, and sheer brute force. They'll pounce on seals as they surface for air, using their powerful jaws and sharp teeth to deliver a swift and deadly blow. But here's where it gets interesting. Polar bears are also known for their incredible swimming abilities. They can swim for long distances in search of food, using their front paws to paddle and their hind legs to steer. In fact, some polar bears have been recorded swimming hundreds of miles without stopping. Now, let's shift gears and talk about the circle of life for polar bears. These majestic creatures have a unique reproductive cycle that revolves around the sea ice. Female polar bears typically give birth to 1 to 3 cubs in late December or early January, denning in snowdrifts or on the sea ice itself. The cubs are born blind, hairless, and completely dependent on their mother for warmth and nourishment. They'll spend the first few months of their lives nursing and growing stronger in the safety of the den. Once spring arrives and the sea ice begins to break up, mother polar bears emerge from their dens with their cubs in tow. This is a critical time for the family, as they must navigate the changing ice conditions and find enough food to sustain themselves. As the cubs grow older and more independent, they'll learn essential survival skills from their mother, such as hunting techniques and how to navigate the icy terrain. Eventually, they'll reach maturity and venture out on their own, continuing the cycle of life for polar bears. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, or should I say, the polar bear in the Arctic? Climate change is arguably the biggest threat facing polar bears today. As temperatures rise and sea ice melts at an alarming rate, polar bears are losing vital hunting grounds and struggling to find enough food to survive. Conservation efforts are underway to protect polar bear populations and their fragile Arctic habitat. These efforts include monitoring populations, studying their behavior and ecology, reducing human-wildlife conflicts, and advocating for policies to mitigate climate change. But it's not just climate change that poses a threat to polar bears. Human activities such as oil and gas exploration, shipping, and pollution also impact their habitat and well-being. It's a complex challenge that requires a collaborative and multifaceted approach to conservation. Before we wrap up, let's sprinkle in some fun facts and debunk a few myths about polar bears. Polar bears are left-handed is just a myth. Actually, polar bears don't have a dominant paw like humans do. They use both paws equally for tasks like swimming, walking, and catching prey. There is another myth that polar bears have a keen sense of smell, which they use to detect prey from miles away. In fact, their sense of smell is so powerful that they can sniff out a seal's breathing hole from more than a mile away. It's a myth that polar bears are aggressive man-eaters. In fact, polar bears are formidable predators. They rarely attack humans unless provoked or threatened. In their natural habitat, they're more focused on hunting seals than bothering humans. Actually, polar bear fur is not only great for insulation, it's also buoyant. This helps polar bears stay afloat while swimming long distances in search of food. All right, folks, that's a wrap on our deep dive into the world of polar bears. These magnificent creatures are not only symbols of the Arctic, but also ambassadors for conservation and climate action. Let's continue to learn, appreciate, and protect our planet and all its incredible inhabitants. Until next time, stay wild and curious.